What would you do with 48 hours in New York City? Hello, and welcome to Let's Chat, the short podcast about movies and TV and occasionally theater. I am your host, Dee. Today we discuss The Clock from MGM 1945, starring Judy Garland as Alice and Robert Walker as Joe. Here's the plot. Soon after arriving in New York City to begin a 2-day leave, Corporal Joe Allen meets Alice Mayberry, a secretary, and is instantly smitten with her. Joe and Alice spend the afternoon sightseeing, then part ways, agreeing to meet for dinner under the clock at the Astor at 7. Then the longer date begins. The Clock is what I would call a walk and talk, a romantic movie where two strangers meet, they talk about everything and nothing while walking around a city. Other notable walk and talks include The Sun is Also a Star from 2019, starring Charles Melton and Yara Shahidi as they walk around New York. Another is 1995's Before Sunrise with Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy as students running around Vienna all night. Another one is Rye Lane from 2023, starring Vivian Opera and David Johnson as two strangers meeting in Brixton and spending the day together. And then a quirkier one might be Destination Wedding from 2018, starring Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder. In that case, it's two guests at a wedding who spend the whole time talking to each other. And in this case, they're not in a city, actually. They're in the countryside. That's less common in the walk and talk. And this one has less romance, but more cynicism. So it was an interesting one to dive into. But it was also, I would consider, a walk and talk. I think they walk through a vineyard and meet a mountain lion. A walk and talk, as I define it, tends to be equal parts romance for the most part, and travelogue. So you will see nooks and crannies of a place. And then also the two main characters are charming people who care about each other or learn to care about each other, and they tend to have conversations that are fun or relatable or interesting in some way. There's usually a ticking clock element, like a time frame, such as they must catch a train in the morning, and that's why they have to stay together all night and chat. Or they have to move in the morning, or one of them is moving house, and so this is why they have to stay together so that they can have time to talk. In The Clock, World War II is ongoing, so the overall emergency is something that everyone in the world is dealing with. Plus, there's the urgency of the 48-hour leave that the soldier has. So Alice and Joe must have a lifetime's worth of information shoved into roughly 2 days. So there's also this specter of death looming over them, frankly, in a way that it doesn't always in your standard walk and talk movie. Even Bosley Crowther, the acerbic critic for the New York Times, softens a little bit when he acknowledges this urgency in his review of the movie from May 4th, 1945. Crowther says, "The Clock is the kind of picture that leaves one with a warm feeling towards his fellow man, especially towards the young folks who, today, are trying to crowd a lifetime of happiness into a few fleeting hours." End quote. As I say, Joe and Alice talk about everything and nothing. Joe has come from a family farm and wants to buy his own land after the war. I can't remember where I read this stat years ago, but I think it was the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But before World War II, over 50% of people in the U.S. lived on farms, which means that Joe is meant to be this relatable person to most members of the audience contemporary with this movie. Joe is meant to be an everyman or an avatar. Alice is a transplant to New York who's slightly jaded but very protective of this farm boy soldier who finds the city initially overwhelming. Ultimately, due to the labyrinth that is the New York transit system and a lack of cell phones in 1945, they lose track of each other in the crowd and they end up finding each other. But after a few hours of just desperation, they don't even know each other's last name. So, like, even trying to find each other is just daunting task. They end up finding each other eventually and then hastily marry. Now, since this is a mid 20th century film where people marrying quickly is a common romance trope of this time, what makes this movie unique is that they allow us, the audience, to see the two people who just got married regret the decision. They don't just say, oh, they're married now, the end, they lived happily ever after. No, we get to see them after the wedding. We get to see Alice cry over how horribly rushed their wedding is. We get to see them question whether it was the right decision. Oh, I've not met your family. Do you think your mother will like me? Suddenly, these worries are rushing in after the fact. And that is not something you get to see all the time in these movies from this era. So I remember seeing this for the first time and just marveling at, oh my goodness, we get to see them regret marriage. They don't often show us that. So I appreciate this film and its attempt to explain and to express legitimate concerns about what these people are doing, about meeting somebody and getting married hastily. These movies don't often address this at all. So even the brief amount of time we get to see them do it, I appreciate it. And ultimately, though, the film ends with Joe leaving for his base, Alice saying goodbye and saying, we'll meet again. She's always trying to reassure herself, probably more than anybody. But she's saying, oh, we're going to meet again. But the movie doesn't allow us to know if they do or not. They part ways. Alice goes into a crowd. We lose sight of her. And that's like the end. We have this huge question mark. Is Alice right? Will they see each other again? We hope so. But because this movie was made in a state of emergency, in all of the state of uncertainty, we don't know. And no doubt the people in the audience watching this movie for the first time back in the 40s, we're going through the same thing. We're going through this. We don't know what's happening. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how anything's going to end in our lives. And it's just the perfect ending to me in that way. It leaves the audience with a question about what happens next because nobody knows. It's a lovely romance that also feels very real because of that uncertainty. A highlight of the film in this is that the director, Vincent Minnelli, bookends the film with a crowd shot in a replica of Penn Station. So it starts off with a crane shot, and we gradually follow a soldier who we later learn is named Joe. We follow him and Alice, who he meets in this station, for the rest of the movie. And then we end the film with a crane shot after we followed Alice. So Alice and Joe part, Alice walks away, we lose her in the crowd, and now we have a crane shot of that crowd as if to say, this camera can pick up another person's storyline and run with it if we want to. It is a sense that this could be your story. This could be anybody's story. We could tell your tale next. I love the sense of this is you, that it seems this movie is trying to tell you. This is you. This is your story, or it could be you. To sum it up, ultimately, there is humor, there is romance, but there's also a need to bring a couple of tissues if you're inclined to weep a little bit. The Clock. Have you seen it? What do you think? This has been Let's Chat with Dee.